One of the most underestimated forms of power is the ability to withdraw your attention without losing your composure. Most people think presence creates value. They believe that if they remain available, answer every message, explain every decision, and constantly remind others that they care, they will become more important. But psychologically, the opposite can often happen. What is always available is rarely examined closely. What is constantly present can gradually become invisible. Think about what happens when someone is suddenly absent. Their silence creates a question. Where are they? Why haven't they responded? Have they changed? Are they no longer interested? The mind begins filling the space with possibilities. And this is where silence becomes psychologically powerful. It forces people to confront the absence of something they had previously taken for granted. This does not mean you should deliberately ignore everyone or use silence as a childish tactic. That is not power, that is insecurity disguised as strategy. Real power comes from knowing that your attention is valuable and refusing to distribute it automatically. When you stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided to misunderstand you, something changes. When you stop chasing conversations that are clearly one-sided, something changes. When you no longer feel compelled to respond to every provocation, criticism, or attempt to pull you into emotional drama, something changes. You begin reclaiming control over your own psychological space, and people notice. They notice when the person who used to respond immediately becomes selective. They notice when someone who once sought their approval suddenly becomes comfortable with silence. They notice when your energy is no longer centered around getting their attention. Why? Because human beings are highly sensitive to changes in patterns. We become accustomed to someone's behavior, and when that behavior suddenly changes, our attention is drawn toward it. The absence becomes more noticeable precisely because there was once a consistent presence. But there is an even deeper lesson here. Your goal should not be to make people wonder about you. Your goal should be to stop wondering about them. That distinction separates psychological strength from manipulation. If you withdraw only because you want someone to chase you, then they still control you. Your behavior remains dependent on their reaction. You are simply using silence to obtain the validation you could not obtain through words. But if you withdraw because you have recognized that your attention belongs where it is respected, then your silence becomes an expression of self-respect. You no longer need to announce your boundaries. You demonstrate them through your behavior. You no longer need to prove that you are valuable. You become selective about where you invest your time, energy, and attention. And ironically, this is often when people begin valuing your presence more. The lesson is simple. Don't disappear to make people miss you. Step back because you have something more important to protect. Your peace, your attention, and your ability to choose where your energy goes. When you stop giving your attention away, you begin discovering its true power. And once you understand the value of withdrawing your attention, you begin to see another important principle. Stop chasing people and give them enough space to reveal who they really are. Most people are uncomfortable with uncertainty. If someone becomes distant, they immediately want an explanation. They send another message. They ask what happened. They try harder to regain the person's attention. But in doing this, they often destroy the very information they need. Their pursuit prevents the other person from revealing their natural level of interest. Think about it. If you are always the one initiating the conversation, always checking in, always making plans, always repairing the relationship, how do you know what the other person would do without your effort? Or you don't. You have created an environment where their lack of initiative is hidden by your constant pursuit. This is why stepping back can be so revealing. When you stop pushing, you create a vacuum. And that vacuum forces people to make a choice. They can move toward you or they can remain where they are. Either outcome gives you information. This is not about playing a game of silence. It is about observing behavior instead of becoming addicted to promises, explanations, and words. People can tell you almost anything. They can say they care. They can say they are busy. They can promise to change. But when you stop carrying the relationship by yourself, their actions become much easier to read. Someone who genuinely values your presence will usually find a way to maintain some form of connection. They may not respond instantly. They may have legitimate responsibilities in periods of distance. But there will be evidence of reciprocity. They will initiate. They will make an effort. They will notice your absence. And then there are those who only respond when you provide attention, entertainment, reassurance, favors, or emotional support. When you stop supplying those things, the relationship suddenly becomes quiet. That silence can hurt, but it can also liberate you, because rejection is not always a loss. Sometimes rejection is information. One of the greatest psychological mistakes is trying to convince someone to value you. The moment you have to constantly demonstrate why you deserve respect, affection, or consideration, you have already placed yourself in a weak position. You have made their judgment the authority over your worth. Step back instead. Let people demonstrate what they feel through their behavior. Let them show you whether they are curious about your life, whether they respect your absence, whether they are willing to invest, and whether they notice when you stop doing all the work. This principle applies far beyond relationships. It applies to friendships, professional environments, social circles, and almost every human interaction. The person who constantly seeks approval becomes predictable. The person who can comfortably step back becomes difficult to manipulate. But remember the deeper purpose. You are not stepping back to punish anyone. You are stepping back to observe reality. When you stop chasing, you stop trying to control the outcome. You allow people to reveal themselves without interference. And that is a powerful form of freedom. Stop chasing explanations. Step back, watch behavior, and let people reveal exactly where you stand in their world. And once you learn to step back and observe, you encounter an even deeper form of power, emotional control. Because there is a difference between being silent and being controlled. Anyone can refuse to answer a message. Anyone can walk away from an argument. But the real question is this: can you remain calm when someone is deliberately trying to provoke you? This is where most people lose their power. Someone criticizes them and they immediately defend themselves. Or someone ignores them and they desperately seek an explanation. Someone insults them and they feel compelled to respond. Someone challenges their status and suddenly they are emotionally invested in proving themselves. The other person has discovered the button and all they have to do is press it. When your emotional reactions are predictable, your behavior becomes predictable. And when your behavior becomes predictable, other people can influence you with very little effort. This is why learning when not to react is so important. Silence gives you something an emotional reaction takes away. Time. A few seconds of distance can completely change the quality of your decision. Instead of responding from anger, insecurity, jealousy, or fear, you can observe what is actually happening. Ask yourself, what is this person trying to make me feel? Or why am I so eager to respond? What happens if I simply refuse to participate? These questions create psychological distance, and psychological distance creates choice. The person who has no control over their emotions is constantly reacting to the environment. Their mood depends on who contacted them, who ignored them, who praised them, who criticized them, or who rejected them. Their inner world becomes a reflection of external events. But imagine the opposite. Imagine someone insults you and you don't immediately defend your ego. Someone attempts to provoke you and you remain composed. Someone withdraws their attention and you don't panic. Someone misunderstands you and you don't spend hours trying to force them to see your perspective. That person possesses something rare: self-command. This doesn't mean becoming cold or emotionless. Emotional control is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to experience emotion without allowing it to dictate your behavior. Anger can exist without becoming aggression, or disappointment can exist without becoming desperation. Fear can exist without becoming paralysis. You feel the emotion, but you choose the response, and sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. There will always be people who test boundaries, or some do it consciously, others do it without realizing what they are doing. They may criticize you just to see whether you become defensive. They may withdraw just to see whether you chase. They may provoke you because your reaction gives them a sense of control. Don't give them that control. The moment you understand that not every action deserves a reaction, your entire relationship with conflict changes. You stop treating every disagreement as a battle. You stop interpreting every silence as rejection. You stop feeling obligated to explain yourself to everyone. You become selective. And that selectivity is power. The strongest person in the room is not always the loudest person. Often it is the person who can remain still while everyone else is being pulled around by emotion. Master your reaction, and you make yourself far harder to control. And once you gain control of your reactions, you begin to understand something even more fundamental. Your attention is a form of power. Most people give their attention away without thinking about it. They respond to every notification, every opinion, every criticism, every demand for reassurance. They allow other people's problems, moods, and expectations to occupy their mental space. And then they wonder why they feel exhausted. Attention is not unlimited. Every hour you spend obsessing over someone, checking whether they have replied, analyzing what they meant, or trying to win their approval, is an hour you cannot spend building yourself. This is why attention should be treated almost like a currency. Where you place it determines what grows in your life. If you constantly give your attention to people who disrespect you, you strengthen their importance in your mind. If you constantly monitor someone who gives you mixed signals, you make their behavior the center of your emotional world. If you spend your days reacting to people who provoke you, they have effectively occupied your mind without paying for the privilege. You have given them access. And many people don't realize how valuable that access is. There is a psychological reason selective attention can change how others perceive you. When someone knows that you are always available, your attention becomes predictable. They don't have to earn it. They don't have to consider how they treat you. They simply assume you will remain there. But when you become selective, the dynamic changes. You don't answer every message instantly because you are living your own life. You don't participate in every argument because not every argument deserves your energy. You don't constantly explain your decisions because you understand that your life does not require universal approval. This creates something important: scarcity. And scarcity naturally makes people pay closer attention. But don't misunderstand the principle. The objective is not to manufacture scarcity as a manipulation tactic. If you deliberately disappear just to make someone anxious, you are still psychologically dependent on their reaction. Your attention is still being controlled by them. True selectivity comes from having priorities. You have goals that require concentration. You have relationships that deserve genuine investment. You have personal standards that require protection. Once you become clear about these things, it becomes much easier to decide where your attention belongs. And this changes the way you interact with people. You listen more carefully because you are no longer trying to be everywhere. You speak more deliberately because you no longer feel the need to fill every silence. You become more present with the people who actually matter because you are not constantly distracted by those who don't. There is also a deeper philosophical lesson here. What you repeatedly focus on becomes part of your identity. If you spend your mental life studying rejection, you become someone who expects rejection. If you constantly monitor other people's opinions, you become dependent on external judgment. But if you direct your attention toward learning, creating, building relationships, and developing yourself, your internal world begins to change. So ask yourself a difficult question: who currently has access to your attention without earning it? The answer may reveal where your power is leaking. Because your attention is not merely something you possess. It is the direction of your life, and whoever controls your attention can influence where your life goes. And once you become selective with your attention, you begin to notice something that was difficult to see before. Distance has a way of revealing character. When you are constantly available to someone, you can easily mistake familiarity for loyalty. You assume that because they talk to you frequently, they value you deeply. But sometimes what you are experiencing is not genuine connection. It is simply access. People can become comfortable with what you continuously provide: your attention, your advice, your emotional support, your willingness to listen, your constant availability. And because you keep giving these things without interruption, they may never have a reason to question their value. Then you step back, not dramatically, not with anger, not with an announcement. You simply stop overextending yourself, and suddenly you begin to see things differently. Who notices? Who reaches out? Who asks whether something is wrong? Who respects your space? And perhaps most importantly, who disappears completely? These questions can be uncomfortable because distance does not create character. It reveals it. If someone genuinely values you, your temporary absence may make them more aware of your importance. They don't necessarily panic or become desperate, but they recognize the change. They make an effort. They check in. They maintain some form of reciprocity. But if someone was primarily interested in what you provided, your withdrawal can expose the relationship very quickly. The moment the benefits disappear, so does the connection. This is one of the reasons you should pay attention to patterns rather than isolated incidents. Someone failing to respond once does not automatically mean they don't care. People have responsibilities, problems, and unpredictable circumstances. Psychological maturity requires nuance, but repeated behavior tells a different story. If you're always the one initiating, always repairing, always compromising, always listening, and always making the relationship work, then you should eventually ask yourself whether you are participating in a relationship or maintaining one single-handedly. That distinction matters, because one of the most dangerous forms of self-deception is believing that effort can manufacture reciprocity. It cannot. You can give someone more attention, more explanations, more patience, more opportunities, but you cannot force them to value what they have. And this is where stepping back becomes powerful. You are not stepping back to punish them. You are stepping back to stop interfering with the evidence. Let their behavior speak. People reveal themselves through what they consistently do when they believe nobody is watching. They reveal their priorities through where they invest their time. They reveal their respect through how they treat boundaries. They reveal their attachment through whether they make an effort when you are no longer carrying everything. And sometimes, what you discover will disappoint you. But disappointment is often preferable to illusion. Because once you know where you stand, you can make intelligent decisions. You can invest more deeply in people who reciprocate. You can establish boundaries with people who take advantage of your availability. And you can release relationships that survive only because you refuse to let them die. There is freedom in that clarity. You stop asking, how do I make this person value me? You start asking, does this relationship deserve my value? That is a completely different question, and it places the decision back where it belongs, with you. Step back, observe the pattern, and let people's actions reveal the place they have truly chosen for you in their lives. And after you learn to control your attention, step back from one-sided relationships, and stop reacting to every provocation, you arrive at the deepest lesson of all. Your power increases dramatically when you no longer need other people's approval to feel valuable. This is where most people remain trapped. They believe they are ignoring someone because they are strong, but internally they are still watching. They check whether the person noticed. They wonder why they haven't responded. They imagine what the other person is thinking. They hope their absence will create regret. But notice the contradiction. If you are constantly thinking about whether someone misses you, you have not really withdrawn from them. They are still occupying your mind. You have changed your behavior, but they still control your attention. Real freedom begins when their reaction becomes irrelevant to your sense of worth. That does not mean becoming indifferent to everyone. Human beings need connection. We naturally want recognition, affection, and belonging. The problem begins when these things become requirements for self-respect. If someone's praise makes you feel powerful, and their criticism makes you feel worthless, you have handed them authority over your identity, and that is dangerous. Because people can manipulate what they know you desperately need. If you need constant reassurance, they can control you through withdrawal. If you need approval, they can control you through criticism. If you fear abandonment, they can control you through distance. If you constantly need to prove yourself, they can control you simply by questioning your worth. The solution is not to become cold. The solution is to become internally anchored. You begin asking yourself different questions. Did I act according to my principles? Did I respect my own boundaries? Did I behave with discipline? Did I give my best effort? Did I treat people fairly without abandoning myself? If the answer is yes, then someone else's approval becomes information, not a verdict. That distinction is incredibly important. You can listen to criticism without being destroyed by it. You can appreciate praise without becoming dependent on it. You can accept rejection without interpreting it as proof that you are worthless. You become capable of walking away without needing to announce your departure. You can lose someone's attention without losing yourself. And this is where ignoring people takes on an entirely different meaning. You are no longer ignoring them to create desire. You are no longer withdrawing to make them chase you. You are no longer silent because you want revenge. You simply stop investing energy where there is no respect, reciprocity, or genuine connection. That is not cruelty. That is discernment. Your life is too limited to spend it constantly managing other people's perceptions of you. You cannot control who understands you, who appreciates you, who envies you, or who chooses to leave. But you can control what you do with your attention. Or you can choose your standards, you can choose your response, you can choose who receives access to your time and energy. And once you understand that, rejection loses some of its power over you. Silence loses its ability to frighten you. Other people's opinions become less threatening. You discover that the greatest form of social power is not making everyone want you. It is becoming so grounded in yourself that you no longer need everyone to want you. So don't use silence to manipulate, or use it to listen to yourself. Don't withdraw to make someone chase you. Withdraw when your energy is being wasted. Don't ignore people because you want them to suffer. Ignore the distractions that keep you from becoming who you are capable of becoming. Because the moment you stop needing external validation to know your worth, you become extraordinarily difficult to control. The strongest person is not the one everyone fears losing. The strongest is the one who knows they will never lose themselves just to keep someone else.